Hi, this is Marlene, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Whether you're watching a video or listening to a podcast, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. Links to videos or MP3 files can be found on MiamiGhostChronicles.com. Go to MarlenePardo.com for information on new book releases. I narrate several podcast series that can be found on major podcast platforms and can also be listened to via Alexa, Sonos, and other home systems. Look for Supernatural Storytime for scary storytelling, Nightshade Diary for classic horror and adventure stories, Stories of the Supernatural for interviews with different guests on the show. If you want to get noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit Strange Than Fiction Stories tab at MiamiGhostChronicles.com or find us on Blogspot. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Good? I'm doing well. As a follow-up to my last episode where the thing about the chickens, I know people are going to say, so Marlene, when are you going to post the next clip of the chickens? Because my last episode, I said I was going to post some more of the chickens, but I just haven't had time. And I know I put some information that I had some new chicks that hatched, and I do. And as a matter of fact, I had another hen hatch another chicken. She's got a few eggs under her, so I got to keep her. So I've got one hen that hatched 10. I've got 10 chicks. And then this other one just hatched one. But let's see. Because what people don't understand is there's no way for you to know if an egg is fertile until they just don't hatch. And it's really funny because hens have like a knowledge about after 3 days of sitting on the eggs, once they start hatching, that's it. They stop. Like they realize if it hasn't hatched, it's not going to hatch. But let me see. Anyway, this is a side note for those people that are into the chickens, the chickenistas among you. Yeah, I'll get a little video going, hopefully by the next episode, of what's going on with the chickens. And I know a lot of you have asked about that, and also the dogs. Because I know before a lot of people would say, "Oh, I remember those dogs, little dogs running around the background." But yeah, I've kicked them out. I've closed the door, my pack. So anyway, guys, let's get on to the good part. And the good part is about my guest tonight. This is a first-time guest here at Stories of the Supernatural. And I'm so looking forward to this interview. Let me tell you about the guest. His name is Joshua Shapiro. And he is what's called a modern crystal skull explorer. He's become intrinsically associated with crystal skulls. He is currently one of the foremost experts in the field of crystal skulls, and his passion for them drives him to share the crystal skull phenomenon with people all over the world. He's not a caretaker of an ancient crystal skull. However, he has one named Portal de Luz, crystal skull, which has the distinction of being a very activated crystal skull. And it has been in the presence of numerous ancient and old crystal skulls, as well as visited a number of sacred sites in the world. Joshua and his partner Katrina Head have 8 other companion crystal skulls which travel with Portal de Luz, which, by the way, translates into English as Portal of Light. And we'll ask him about the names and everything about these companion skulls during the show. At times, Shapiro or Joshua may take a somewhat extreme esoteric viewpoint. However, he's merely presenting the range of crystal skull legends and theories. He has a skull ebook called Crystal Skull Explorers, and he also has another book called Journeys of the Crystal Skull Explorers. He has several websites, which I'm going to go ahead and post the links in the credits of the show, and we'll talk about those at the end of the show, like what I usually do for the people that are listening to the podcast. But in the meantime, help me welcome him to the show. How are you doing, Joshua?
I'm great, and I'm very excited to be here with you.
No, it's my pleasure. It is my pleasure. And I'm going to ask you what I ask my guests, depending on their field of interest. How did you become involved with crystal skulls?
Well, my journey into supernatural, the spiritual, the paranormal, whatever you want to call, started back when I was in my early 20s, after I got out of college. And I really had no idea as I was growing up that I would be involved in these things. But the essence of who I am is that when I have an experience, because I think that I learned through my experiences, and I think there was an astrologer who looked at my chart and said, my life is going to be based on experiences. When something comes up that I don't fully understand or know, and probably it's because I'm Aries too. My birthday was, about 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago. And
happy birthday. Belated, but happy birthday.
Thank you. Number 66. So I'm still going strong. I don't feel 66. The body might feel 66, but the mind and the energy for the study of these things and to do projects and write books and all of that, that's very exciting. So that's the typical Aries energy. So as an Aries, and I've talked to other Aries, it's our nature when any kind of challenge comes up or a mystery comes up or a question, we have to go 100% and dive into it and find out what is that about. So like everyone else, or at least people, let's say around our age, in the 70s, they had the show by Arthur C. Clarke, Mysterious World. And in there they showed, the Mitchell Hedges skull in the introduction. And he had a program where the Mitchell Hedges skull was brought to the museum in London, which has a crystal skull also that's still on display there. So like everyone else, I, heard about it, but I never thought to get involved in them. Okay. So my beginning happens when I meet my first crystal skull directly. And this is one which I believe is a very old or ancient one that not too many people have been able to experience. And also I'm very sad because whoever has the skull, it was purchased, I don't know, probably around 2008 or 9 from this group of Hispanic gentlemen who had acquired it on they gave a loan to acquire it from a Mayan priest, basically, in Mexico. It's known as a me, and it's made out of amethyst quartz, which is the purple quartz.
Right.
And so and again, this is in my late 20s. I'm traveling on faith in California. And I visit this friend who had a metaphysical bookstore called the Ram Metaphysical Bookstore. And it's very interesting. I always felt, and I still feel, although I'm not sure what's happened to her, if she's still alive or not, like she was my mom in the past. She actually had a son who passed away that had my birth date. Wow. So it was very interesting. So anyway, she was one of the first bookstores that actually carried my first book I ever wrote, which was called Journeys of an Aquarian Age Networker, which is out of print. And this was my attempt to share with people information I was collecting as I was traveling on faith. So it's like UFOs were in there, crystals were in there, holistic health was in there, the idea of networking and working together and sharing resources, all kinds of subjects, like a 500-page book, hodgepodge of different information I collected. So I went to visit her to see if she needed more copies of the book, because this was one of the ways that was supporting me, selling copies of the book. And then she pulls out this picture of this amethyst skull, which today we know is called a me, which means friend. Right. One of the prior owners came up with that name. And, it was like, as I'm looking just at the picture, I felt a tremendous vibration. I called it an inner earthquake inside of myself. Okay. And then about a half an hour to an hour later in Kalinga, California, which is about 150 miles south of San Jose, California, where the bookstore was, there was an earthquake. And of course, the picture that was sitting on the table was vibrating. So there was an inner and an outer earthquake. And then I can't remember this, but it was like this crystal skull was speaking to me telepathically. Okay. I could hear it in my thinking voice. And I distinctly recall, and again, I can't remember exactly how, but I recall a message through the picture of the skull. And this is before I actually physically met it, which I did shortly after this time. I heard it saying, now that you know that we're here, meaning there are many of them,
Right.
and we're coming back to help humanity to create peace, what are you going to do about it? So it was like that question was the catalyst that I call that day one of being a Crystal Skull explorer, with the idea of an explorer, trying to find answers. What is this about? Because for most people, if you say, okay, I have a crystal skull. Oh, great. You have a stone that's made into the shape of a skull, whether it's human or animal or alien.
Right.
And big deal. So what? Why is that significant? Why would you spend all this time writing books and lecturing and everything? It's just a stone. There's nothing to it. Now I'm going to bring in another story, which connects with Portal de Luz, which is the skull you mentioned, which is a 10-pound smoky quartz skull done by a very talented Brazilian carver, who's my friend, that came to me in 1999, was a gift from an ex-wife.
Okay.
And so anyway, now I'm a crystal skull explorer. I have Portal de Luz. I'm traveling. I'm lecturing. I'm writing. So eventually I go to Europe. And I think what happened is, before I lived in Holland, I was traveling through Europe, and somehow I met this person in Belgium at a lecture that I gave in Belgium about crystal skulls, which had quite a few people. I would say 50, 60 people were there. And then he said, I'd like to invite you to my house. There's a certain device that we use. It's called a Lecular antenna. So the only way I can describe this device is it's like a dowsing rod, but it has numbers on the side. And it's like, a dowsing rod will move when it finds something. This thing flips when it touches the energy that's being measured for. So the concept was, we were going to take Portal de Luz, put him on the table, and see what frequency of energies is he emanating. Okay. And so the teacher, this was like a group, and the teacher was there, and my friend was one of the students. He was saying, this is a rock, this is a stone. Absolutely nothing's going to happen, and we are wasting our time. We are totally wasting our time to do this. So the reason that I allowed this is because one of the ways to understand what these crystal skulls are about is to use different devices. Right. Like maybe, Kirlian sensitive devices, or meridian sensitive.
Right. Well, like the aura and stuff like that measures the aura.
Yeah. So, and this is another device. It's not electronic, but it measures frequency of energy. And by looking at these energies that are being broadcast by the skulls, it may give us some understanding about, why are they doing what they're doing? Why aren't they just a stone sitting there doing absolutely nothing? Why are they having a profound impact upon people, on their emotions, on their health, on their gifts, their spiritual gifts, their creative gifts, giving them an energy that changes their life forever. So, so anyway, so they, they're taking it towards the skull.
Okay.
And they come back to the teacher and said, this so-called stone that you're calling is sending out the vibrational frequencies of the 5 human senses.
Wow.
What? Do that again. They did it 3 times, and 3 times he did it. Now, what the listeners need to understand, and I've talked to other people, we call ourselves guardians, because we don't really own the skulls. I think they pick us. We don't pick them. But the common phenomenon, and this is my interpretation of it, and each guardian will have their own interpretation, is that somehow when a stone, it doesn't have to just be quartz. Quartz were the first crystal skulls that came out. Okay. But now they have it in many different gemstones, and we actually have a few that are not quartz. somehow they are a receptacle to allow a living consciousness, which is not physical, to work through the skull and animate it. And then the guardians, and like Portal de Luz, I know he has a masculine energy. He likes to have fun. He jokes. He's very talkative. Sometimes I have to tell him to shut up. It's like it takes on a quality of a person.
Let me ask you something, Joshua.
Yeah.
Since this was your first skull, was it given to you, or was there something that you felt drawn to that one in particular? How did you come together with that particular skull?
Well, what happened is I was invited to be a speaker. I think this was in 1999 in Sedona, Arizona. They had a kind of a crystal skull conference. Okay. And by the way, I had to fight to be that speaker because unfortunately, like in many other areas of the paranormal and UFOs and all these studies, when human beings get involved, there are sides. There's, competition and so on. And so there were some guardians that weren't too happy with what I was doing because I'm not a follower. Okay. I'm not to say I'm a leader, but I have to do what I have to do.
So let me ask you. So in other words, were you involved? In other words, you were already involved in the crystal skull phenomena, but you didn't have one. You didn't have.
Right. I didn't have my own.
Okay.
And I'd seen many at this point in 1999.
Okay.
And then my ex-wife, who was Brazilian, during the conference, we had a booth. That's what we were given as a speaker. I don't even think they paid me as a speaker. I just made whatever. Some of the speakers had their expenses paid and the whole thing, but it didn't matter. I just knew I had to be there. So we had a booth. And what happened was the people that were next to us, they had a booth filled with different crystal skulls. These were carved by modern carvers. Okay. And one of the speakers got up and did a world peace meditation. So I went to the table. I knew the people. I said, would it be okay if I just borrowed one of the skulls to hold during this world peace meditation? Now, I think the one that I have now, Portal de Luz, is the one I picked. But again, I can't remember exactly. Okay. So if I say the story this way, I may not be telling the truth, or it could be because these skulls were made by the same carver. They all look very similar. Okay. But they look quite human-like, and that's what was important to me. Rather than a stylized skull or, something that you can't relate to. I like the ones that look human-like. So I took one of those, held it, did a meditation, put it back. Then, 10, 15 minutes later, the ex-wife comes up, and she's holding a crystal skull, and she presents it to me, and it's Portal de Luz. And she says, this is for you. I go, what are you talking about? She did these spiritual tours to Peru, and she did very well. She said, I did very well on my tour, so I'm gifting this to you. Okay. So this is how Portal de Luz comes. Okay. Now, the other thing that we have to understand, or which I understand now, is that this living consciousness that exists within the skull, it already knew that this skull would be coming to me. Okay. Or it wanted to work with me, or however you wanted to say it. So, although the ex-wife was the catalyst to bring it, the skull could have been talking with her and said, I need to go to Joshua. Right. You need to purchase me and gift me to Joshua or whatever.
Where's the vehicle, in other words?
Right. Now, I think it was at this very same conference, too. There was a lady there, Carol Wilson Davies, who had worked with the most famous crystal skull, the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull. And she was a medium, and she had gone into an altered state. And supposedly some consciousness inside of the skull was speaking through her. And so I had a session with her, and she was working with Portal de Luz, and her hands were going all over. And she had talked about that when this stone was even in the ground before it had been shaped into the skull, it knew that it was going to eventually find me. So this was like a soul agreement or something.
That is so interesting.
And then the Brazilian carver got it Leandro's his name, and he made it into shape of skull, and then it got sent to these people who were from Colorado that had the table, and that's how it found me. And so she was kind of confirming that, this skull already knew that eventually it would meet with me.
And that was going to be my question. At what point do these skulls acquire, like you said, I don't know, the person, the spirit, the whatever it is? Is it during the creation of that skull? But from what you're saying, it comes in even before that.
Well, if this consciousness is spiritual in nature or dimensional, okay, then it is really, and also too, when I saw the Mitchell Hedges skull at a conference in San Francisco, it showed me the same thing. Okay. And what happened to me is the guardian Anna Mitchell Hedges, when she was alive, was sitting at a table, and all of us could come up for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, see the skull. So I came up, and I started telepathically talking to it, because I saw from my co-authors, especially Bone and Nasserino, who had worked with that skull for like a month. Anna Mitchell Hedges used to live near Toronto, Canada, so they stayed there for like several weeks or a month, and they were taking these pictures, and there were images that were appearing inside of the Mitchell Hedges skull. So this is important because I'm asking the skull telepathically as I'm looking at how do these holographic images that are showing up and are being able to be filmed, probably on video and pictures, how are they coming inside of you? Where is that happening? Right, and so the skull says, okay, watch, I'll show you. So what happened is an etheric double of itself rose. Now I'm seeing this in my mind's eye. I don't think anyone else saw this.
Okay.
Because this skull could have, I don't know how many different communications with people all around it that would be totally different, unique experiences. So what I saw is it rose above itself, an etheric image of it, and it said, now look at the crystal. And so I did, and I felt no energy there whatsoever.
In other words, it was like a blank slate.
Yeah, so what it was saying is this consciousness that works through it is what is creating all the energy and the experiences that people are coming. So the consciousness, therefore, is aware of the people around it and probably knows who they are by their vibrational frequency and sends out something to them which can trigger some change. So when they come back to see the same skull, maybe a year or two later, they're not the same person anymore, and they're ready for the next energy that can be given to it. So this has been my sensing around the skulls, is that, they're quite aware of who we are on a vibrational level. And so as far as when a person gets a skull, I think that it is a partnership. Like, for example, when I was in England the first time, Portal de Luz is saying, and he calls me Dad. He said, Dad, let's go to the crop circles. I want to go to the crop circles. Okay, so we actually started doing that. And then we met up with some crop circle researchers who had sensitive energy type devices that could measure the frequencies in the true crop circles, not the fake ones. Okay. Because just like with UFOs, for many years they kept saying that people were crazy and, nothing. But now the government is starting to share some of the video that they have, and this is not an illusion. They're finally
admitting a little bit.
Right. This is not illusion, and they're talking about a disclosure, but a partial disclosure. I actually read, I can't remember the man's name, but he's very well respected, was saying that, because he was talking about Corey, I can't remember Corey's last name, but he's a whistleblower. He was on the show with David. This is the problem when you become 66. You can't remember the names.
I know who you're talking about, but yes.
The two of them had this show on Gaia. Okay. Very good. Right. Katrina's in the background, so she helps me. She doesn't. She's starting to forget too a little bit, but she remembers it. So Corey Good was talking in this article I read, and he was saying that they're going to do a disclosure, but they're only going to give you a little tiny piece. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I always think about is, why would Creator say, oh, just the earth is going to have intelligent life? That doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
And plus, if we study the evolution of humanity, it's very clear somebody was involved in the creation of what we are now. Okay, there was some intervention of some kind. Our DNA could have been changed, or we could have been interbreeding with other, races, and part of that, of their DNA, is inside of us too. So we are galactic citizens. So, so anyway, all of these things are interconnected, and so it's very interesting going into the crop circles with Portal de Luz, and then having these researchers do tests on energy and the whole thing. And the bottom line is, I'm very proud of Portal de Luz, because when I meditated with him on the first crop circle in England, that we were able to do energy measurements. Mm-hmm. We changed the frequency of the energy at the center. At first it was 0, but Portal de Luz showed us why. We saw a spiraling energy. This was at the center. I think it was a yin-yang pattern in this crop circle. There was a spiraling energy. We saw him going up and down really fast, so it was negating itself. So if you measured it, it would be 0. But after I meditated with him and we put him back at the center, then it was off the scale. So
you mentioned in the introduction that after that you have other skulls.
Yes.
How does that? I want to say, do they communicate amongst each other, or?
Yes, they do. They do. They're like a big family. Okay. So if the people accept that I can hear what they're saying, okay, and there are other guardians who will tell you the same. Katrina, my wife, also, she has the ability. Whereas I hear it in my thinking voice, she will actually hear a separate voice.
All right.
Okay.
Not clairaudient. Okay.
Right. So basically what they're saying is that they wish, now this is very profound, they wish that humanity could emulate the friendliness and love and respect that they have for each other, that we could do the same between person to person. Because, it's like, I call them our crystal kids. When our kids get a chance to meet other of the members of their family, they're very excited. Okay. And they will exchange energies. So this reminds...
When you were going to pick one, or I don't know, however you came, did any of them, did you get a feeling from the ones you had, like, like thumbs up?
Well, each one has a unique story of how it gets acquired, whether it's gifted. Most of them we don't buy.
All right.
Okay, mostly they're gifted. So I'm thinking about Geronimo Golden Eagle Eye, who is another smoky quartz. Portal de Luz is smoky quartz. This one was made by the same carver, Leandro, but is much smaller. Okay. But Geronimo Golden Eagle Eye, as the name implies, is very connected to indigenous energies and indigenous drumming and indigenous ceremony. Okay. I remember that when I first saw him, he had been sent to us by Leandro for the purpose of selling him. Okay. And then I remember a situation came up where I'm looking at him, and at this early stage, he was really clear. And that's what I liked about him, was how clear the smoky quartz was. Now, of course, that's not true now, because as the skulls start to have their own experience and record frequencies of energy and so on, then internally they change. So Portal de Luz, I know, has greatly changed. He was very dark when I first got him, and now he goes kind of from a little bit a dark gray to a very light gray. And I actually saw him with a woman in Poland who put him, and I don't know how she did this because he's 10 pounds, but somehow she kept him by her throat and was singing. And when she brought him back after she finished, he was totally clear. Wow. So this is one thing that scientists don't like about the skulls, like this teacher when we were using the luckier antenna, that they have the ability to change their physical structure. Okay? Because in a way, what they're showing to us is and I just read this. Somebody had a message from the Pleiadians, and I remember they said this too. Who we really are, we are not physical beings. We are energetic beings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And because of some belief that we have inside of ourselves, we accept that we're in the physical reality. But if we could see ourselves like as spirit, I work with spiritual mediums. I said, how do you see us? They said, we see you as lights. They don't see us as physical. They see us as lights, which is our aura.
Okay.
So essentially what happens through the crystal skulls is you start to have these experiences.
All
It
right.
starts to awaken the inner soul wisdom you have and starts to help to better understand the reality that we find ourselves in.
Have they ever communicated to you through dream time?
The only dream that I can recall, because I don't dream that much, is when I was in Peru looking for the blue skull, which is a whole other story. Wrote a whole book about a skull I've never seen in the physical, but I definitely know it exists. When I was out there high up in the Andes Mountains, and I had a fever, and it was snowing, and I was chilled, I remember waking up having a dream where the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull was there, and some blue skull was there, but it wasn't the one I was looking for. And then we had a person who read that book, and around one of my birthdays when we lived in Seattle, probably like 7, 8, 9 years ago, she was so enthralled by that story, she sent a blue lapis lazuli skull, which we now call the rabbi, because he has a spot on the top of his head that looks like, and I was brought up in Jewish, like a yarmulke. So she called him the rabbi, so we kept that name, the rabbi. So it's just all these stories and how they interconnect, and it's the same for other guardians too. If you ask them, well, how did you get your skull, and so on, they have their own unique story, which has some profound twists and turns to it.
What happens when, I guess, I don't know if to say, do people sell them? What happens if somebody passes away? What goes on? What happens with these skulls as far as the connection that they have with a certain person?
Yeah, I can't tell you that story. It's not allowed yet. Okay, so
All right.
No, something new has come up that's pretty fantastic, but I'm not allowed to talk about it yet.
Okay, I understand.
So what happens is, like, let's take the case of some people in Mexico. Okay, in Mexico, they have found a lot of crystal skulls in the ground or near ancient ruins. And they said there's so many, you kick the ground and one comes out, rolling out, literally. So I know what's happened there is there have been families that have had them, and then they would pass them on to their relatives. So they have been passed that way. But then also, too, there have been times where, like, for example, there's one called E.T. that my friend Jochen Vediten has, who is a Dutch lady. That's a very amazing skull. A Mayan family had it in Guatemala, and they sold it. They were very poor, and then they were very upset afterwards, like they weren't supposed to do that. But this is the thing we have to understand, because we sell crystal skulls, but we're basically selling new ones being made by modern carvers, which we will charge with our skulls if the person wants. And I'm not totally sure that we don't have some ancient ones. There's two we have that are kind of Tibetan style skulls that are quite old. But it's like when I talk to them, they say, this labeling that you give, it doesn't really matter. We're all unique. It doesn't matter if we're new or ancient or old or whatever category human beings give us. We're just crystal skulls, and we each have our own frequency and our own service and energies that we share with humanity. So, like, for example, we know Portal de Luz is a modern made skull, but he faked out a Mayan elder. When I was in Holland, Portal de Luz said, you need to bring me, leave me on the table, and when the elder comes up, you are not allowed to say anything. Just let the elder decide for himself. So the elder's looking at the skull and then asks, whose skull is this now? Of course, he's speaking in Spanish, and my Spanish is not as good as your Spanish, which I can tell is good by how you pronounce Bartol's name. So I had an interpreter, And he's saying to me, this skull is one of ours, meaning the very old one, a Mayan skull. And I knew it wasn't. And I said, Grandfather, I'm very sorry. You're mistaken. This was made by a modern carver in Brazil. But he was faked out by the energies that Portal de Luz had collected by being in the presence of some of the old skulls he's met, by being in sacred sites, by being in crop circles, by being in meditations for world peace, by being in my sessions with people. So all these energies are building up. And plus, I haven't a clue who is the consciousness that is Portal de Luz.
Okay. Can you tell us sometimes the country or the country it was carved by the way it's carved? Or
yeah, the two main places where crystal skulls are carved, modern carved, is China and Brazil. Okay, but China, like I had a friend that one of our skulls he gifted us, it's called Rosalita. It's a duplicate of the Mitchell Hedges skull made out of rose quartz. He gifted it to us. I couldn't believe, because he has a separate jaw like the Mitchell Hedges skull. And they had a carver who was very talented that could do this. But there's a different style between the Chinese and the Brazilians.
All right.
Okay. But then you have to understand there can be carvers anywhere in the world.
Sure.
But the countries which have the most is Brazil and China. I know there's some carvers in Mexico, in the United States. I met a carver in Switzerland. So they're all over. So you can kind of tell by the style, because each place kind of does it. But unfortunately, our contacts in China have disappeared because what they're doing there is very horrific, which we don't hear anything about. In the last email I got from my friend there, who is the owner of a company that sold many crystal skulls, he says China is the most evil country in the world. And then I never heard from him again. He shouldn't have said that.
I was going to say,
because they were reading all the emails. I'm surprised I even got it. And there was a major project we were working on, which to develop a new series of skulls, actually based on the style of Ami. Since Ami is in prison, it's with some person now who's not sharing the skull, and they don't like that. They want to be out there working with people, to be shared, to help, just like nature. If you're sensitive to the energy of nature, nature is the same. It's to be of service for life. And that's what I believe the skulls are, to be of service for life and to be an inspiration to help humanity to create peace on this planet. So I'm pretty sure that they have a role to play in bringing peace to our world in the future. And that, even though many people, we've done all kinds of world meditations, and some people have taken them to sacred sites and done sacred ceremony with them, or so on. Well, I'll say it this way. There's a story I wrote called Crystal Skull Chronicles.
Okay.
And in Crystal Skull Chronicles, it shows 13 skulls coming together in Brazil in a sacred place there, which I visited. And that when the right set of skulls comes together, their vibrational frequency is the catalyst to totally shift. They keep talking about ascension, us going from 3D to 5D. Right. That's the catalyst. Or in that moment when they rejoined, they used to be together and then they were sent out throughout the world, then they come back. It brings world peace. It shifts the vibrational frequency. So let's say like an Arab and Israeli, they're fighting, and then I show in the story like some kind of energy with rainbow colors that shoots out from a circle of the skulls, covers the earth, and all of a sudden all the people that you don't like and are your enemy, you look at them and say, no, how can I feel that way? That's my brother, that's my sister, and hugs them in love and respect and honor. So whether
is this like, would you say this coincides with what, that old song, that we're transitioning into the Aquarian age?
Well,
or that in other words, that something like what you described, that old song that came out, what was it, in the 70s?
Yeah, the Age of Aquarius.
Age of Aquarius, which was a little bit premature, but of course he transitioned into these ages. lengthy. Well, it's not like a next year kind of thing.
Right. Well, Aquarius is brotherhood.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
And we are moving into the influence astrologically of the constellation of Aquarius.
Right.
Okay. Right. So yes, I believe that. I mean, Spirit once said this to me. It said, anything that you can imagine, you can only imagine it because it already exists somewhere. Okay. So if I'm imagining this story with the skulls coming together, and there are legends by the indigenous people about a sacred set of 13 skulls. Okay. Because 1 in 12 comes up repeatedly in humanity. In Judaism, you have the Levites, which are the priests in the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. Christianity, you have Christ and the 12 apostles. And I believe in our solar system, there are 12 planets. Okay. I'm not sure if Pluto is still considered a planet or not.
Right.
But George Hunt Williamson, who was an early UFO contactee that wrote some very powerful books, even today, if you read it, you will be forever changed by what he wrote about. Said there is some planet before Mercury that looks like a sunspot, and there are 2 beyond Pluto. And we keep talking about Nibiru having an elliptical orbit, and they also think the Oort cloud, there could be 1 or 2 more planets beyond that. So
we're talking about a planet between Mercury and the Sun, is what you're saying? That looks like
that's what George Hunt Williamson talked about.
Okay.
So anyway, he figured out there were 12 planets. I don't know if that one exists or not. I definitely know that there is life on the other planets in our solar system, but not the way we understand it. Definitely on Venus, but they're in a higher vibration. So unless they lowered their vibration, just like the people that live in the inner Earth, unless they lowered their vibration, it's like, we can't see them. Sasquatch is the same. Why, they see prints of Sasquatch and then it disappears. It goes into a higher vibration.
Exactly.
So
what are you saying? That they have the power of interdimensional travel because of they have vibration?
First of all, they exist in a different vibration of the Earth, which maybe we're moving toward. And when they come here, they have the ability through the power of their mind to switch their vibrational frequency. So if you're a sensitive person, and this has happened to me a few times, Mount Shasta, so when I can think about, we're at the top of the mountain, or as far as you can go, they have like a road that'll take you up to a certain point. I'm looking at the trees and I thought, yeah, there's Sasquatch out there, but I couldn't see it, but I felt it. I heard it. Okay. So they're sensitive enough. They know the people who will be open and receptive and the people who are afraid, of them. So it's all these things are interconnected. I'm sorry, I'm jumping from story.
No. That's fine. It's fascinating. Joshua, let me ask you the origins of the beings that inhabit these skulls. Are they origins here as part of our Earth, or do they have any type of ET origin? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, yeah, they say yes and yes.
Oh,
so it could be a spirit that exists on the Earth, because there are a lot of spirit. There used to be a time where we could see the nature spirits, and only special people do. So it can be from there. It's kind of like the crystal. Let's look at a quartz skull, okay? Because that's the one I resonate the most with. The quartz says, I'm open, okay, to whatever needs to happen. I'm willing to go out into the world and be of service to the people I'll meet. And then it gets put into a shape, so it gets put into the shape of a skull. But that's working with the consciousness of the stone, right?
Okay.
And then it says, okay, I'm open to allow other consciousness to come in. Well, depending upon who may be the guardian, like I would guess Portal de Luz would have a more cosmic or ET consciousness, because that's who I am. Right. I'm not as good with the nature part of Earth. I respect it. I know it is important, but I feel like I'm more a cosmic wanderer than an Earth guardian. Okay. And it doesn't matter, because we each have a role, and collectively all our roles come together. We cover everything. So we can't be everything. If we tried to be everything, we would disappear and we would become creator. Creator is everything.
Right,
okay?
Right. And I know what you're saying. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just differences.
Right. We just each have a unique role. And it's, what I'm doing, I like what I'm doing. I like who I am. This resonates. This flows for me. Okay. Yes. I'm not trying to impress or be something I'm not. I just do what naturally comes to me. And I assume, and again, I've heard these messages, when you honor yourself and you love yourself and you do what makes your heart sing, then you are being genuinely who you are. You are the expression of creator.
Exactly.
So, and I also got the message, and I think this came from creator, is I said, creator, what do you receive from us compared to the immensity of all the realities and the size of the universe and everything? We're so insignificant and tiny. And the voice said, why, your unique experiences, of course. So in other words, and I know that there are parallel earths, and I know there are other aspects of ourselves, okay, who are making different choices. Some of the parallel earths are really close to ours. Or as Gene Decode said, he's one of the people that's talking about what's going on right now. He said basically people are deciding which reality they want to be in. Do they want to be in the peaceful reality timeline, or do they want to be in the Armageddon timeline? These are the
multiverse, is what you're saying,
right? But these are the two directions our planet is going right now. Yeah. Okay, in the chaos that we have, and the people that are trying to be in charge and who think they have been in charge for a long time, call them whatever name you want, elite, Illuminati, whatever. They want the Armageddon timeline, okay? Right. And they're fighting for that. But then we have the light workers and the Alliance or the White Hats, and we're creating the Paradise timeline. Right. Okay.
Exactly.
So that's why I think the crystal skulls have made their presence known, knowing that this challenging time would come up and that they could be of benefit to humanity, to help people to awaken to their spirituality, to their gifts, to their mission, to the work that they're here to do. So, but what I'm saying is, what is kind of in charge of the frequencies of energies the skulls are emanating is a living consciousness. And each living consciousness, which might be a single one or through the Mitchell Hedges, not in the Mitchell Hedges skull, but when I was meditating with it, in the corner in the room I was in, I picked up a group of dimensional beings that I have never, ever encountered before, which I cannot even describe in words. Okay. Who have never had a physical existence. And why they showed up, I still don't know. Although I know that after I had that experience, in general, I mean, I can't stop being an Aries, so certain times I'm going to be loud no matter what. I can't help that. But in general, I'm mostly calm and in the neutral. I learn from that experience that the only person I can change is myself. I can give advice, but I can't be attached. And this is the key, I think, for everything. We cannot be attached to the outcome, or that, if we share something with someone, that right away they're going to accept it and be grateful. They may not be in accord with what we say. It may be totally against who they feel they are. So we just have to share something if we're given permission and release it. Just like you're interviewing me, you're giving me permission and asking me questions. And as your audience is listening to this crazy Jewish guy, for some of them, they're going to go, Joshua's out of his mind. I don't know where he's coming from with this. How can he possibly live on the earth, an earth life while he's going through all these things? And other people go, oh, I got it. Because I see that when I do my presentation. There are always a few people that are like this. As I'm talking, we're so in sync. Okay? But the message I got from Creator is your experiences is we're all unique too. So, of course, my experiences are not going to resonate for everyone in my understanding, because I'm trying to look at the simplicity of everything. And the only thing that makes sense of all of it is that we are each a part of Creator. Okay? Creator is the whole, and we are a part, but we have within ourselves these divine abilities and capabilities, which is our inheritance by being a child of God. And then Creator loves us and loves our experiences, because even if there are other us's, there is only one Joshua Shapiro,
yes,
and one you that are having the unique experience we're having. And unless Creator does what they showed in the Matrix and restarts all of creation over again,
all right,
it's not going to happen again. So this is the only opportunity Creator has to have these unique experiences, which means there is no right or wrong. There's just what challenges you or what brings you joy, or if something doesn't work, don't get down and beat yourself up. Just say, that didn't work. I can try again. I can try something different. Okay.
Well, you know what happens, and people don't realize that what makes life interesting are differences.
Yes, exactly.
You know, if we were all the same or on the same page, it'd be kind of boring. Because after a while, it'd be like, you know, the spice of life is differences, whatever they might be. And, you know, and learning to, like you said, like you just described, when you look at your audience, some people are like, nah. And then others are like, yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure you realize, hey, it doesn't matter about the ones that are not on board or don't get it. They just don't.
Right. Or what happens is sometimes you will say something to someone and they won't get it in that moment, but then 5 months later, now I get what Joshua was saying. What he was trying to, it all makes sense now. It's like Data in Star Trek didn't get humor, and they gave him the emotion. Finally, I get the joke.
Yes,
you know,
joke.
It was told 5 years ago. He finally understands the joke.
Joshua, do animals react around the skulls?
Oh yes, and small children too.
Really?
Yes, they're very sensitive to energy. Again, a story with E.T., which is a kind of an E.T.-looking skull that Yoke Van Dieten had, is she told us, we went with her to Australia, and we were participating in some lectures and a conference. After we left, she stayed with this family who had, I think it was 2 dogs that were, you know, emotionally, they were distraught, or they had been mistreated, or, you know, and they were in bad shape, but then they got healed by being around the skull. Okay. Really? Or what I've done is, like, you know, when we have a crystal skull, if they're young children, I will not say anything and just see how they react. And I remember in Brazil, there was a mother I met with her young child, and the child just kept touching the skull. You know, I had a small one that she could hold, her child could hold, and she just kept touching it. So, yeah. So anybody who's sensitive. Now, one thing Spirit's saying to me is, because the crystal skulls basically are neutral, and they're recording frequency of energy around them, there are some skulls that have picked up man's inhumanity to man. Okay, I found that true in Mexico, where I think some times of the Mayan, they were doing sacrifices and they were putting the skull in a person's heart. They were doing not so nice things, and so since they're in the neutral, they don't judge what's good or bad. So sometimes they will pick up some of that. So generally, what I've seen happen is the people who are not comfortable with the skull, they'll look for one experience or one event where something that wasn't so positive happened, so they can throw it all out and totally ignore all the people who are having very profound and positive experiences and expansion experiences by working with them, or healing experience by working with them. So,
you know, and I'm going to ask you a quick question for anybody that's considering, that's been intrigued, that has maybe wanted to get a crystal skull. Based on what you just said, does it really matter who? I'm not talking about the person that carved it. You know, they created it. But if that skull belonged to somebody else, I mean, is there any caveats with something like that, as far as if you get a skull that comes from somebody else who had it?
Well, most of the time we try to help people with a brand new one that's not had a guardian before, which would be a new one. But if you're dealing with, and it's your destiny to come across one of the older ones, And obviously it will have been with other people, so it may be your mission, if the energy is not balanced, to help to cleanse it. There are certain things you can do to cleanse it. There are people with the new skulls, too, that are selling them to other people. If you're really feeling drawn to have one, you just have to be open for the experience. You can't, like, plan it. Okay. Like, there was a lot of times where I thought, okay, I'm going to do it this way, and this is going to happen, and it never works out that way. So I just learned from the skulls, like, just be more spontaneous, you know, like when Portal de Luz first came after that conference, I remember I would take him into the bed and meditate with him, which was not easy, 10 pounds, holding him over my stomach or whatever. Which I don't do anymore because I'm already integrated with his energy, but that's what we were doing. So each person has, it's like a new journey, a new adventure, okay? All I can say to people is, it's just like I would say to people, we're never going to go back to the way the world was before.
All right.
After what's happening. Once the crystal skull enters your life, you'll never be the same again. So before you decide to accept this, and I remember I said this in a conference to like 600 people in Hungary, I said, you know, before you decide you want to work with them, think about it carefully, because your life won't be the same. And then I don't want you to come back to me and say, why didn't you warn me? You know, because the changes, which sometimes it brings out a healing, sometimes it brings great adventures. You know, it's really, it's unknown. I can't say any one thing that I could promise for somebody, other than it will be their own unique experiences with it. And of course, you know, they can read about what other people experiences have had and how they've worked with them, and then decide which ones work the best for them. Or they may come up with new things that nobody's ever thought about before.
You mentioned healing. Are there people that acquire a skull because precisely for the reasons of healing?
Yes, absolutely.
How does that work?
Let's see. How can I answer that question? I think what it is, again, it's based on vibration. Okay. And I can only give you one example I can think off the top of my head with a me.
Okay.
So after Amif was came into possession of these Hispanic business people, one of them, Al Ramirez, who unfortunately passed away, but he was the only one who truly understood what the crystal skull represented that they had, and really honored it properly. I think he was a Mayan priest that had the skull before. I saw him when he was meditating with it. I saw him change. He had a blood vessel in his brain that wasn't growing properly. And the doctor said, if you were a younger person, there's a surgery we could do that would be successful. However, being older, if you decide to do the surgery, you might become like a vegetable. We don't know what will happen, but it's your choice. So he decided to do the surgery, and that's what happened to him. He could barely move or speak. But then he felt that if he worked with the amethyst skull, he could get healed. So I don't know how he communicated to his family, but he tried to say, put him on the ground and put the skull on the ground with the back of the skull's head to the back of his head. And then while he was there, all he would keep thinking about is, I'm going to be healed, I'm going to be healed, I'm going to be healed. And after doing that for a certain period of time, all his abilities came back, and the doctors couldn't believe it. So, so I think that sometimes there are people who a crystal skull will come to, or they will have a meeting with a person who's a guardian, and they will get some form of a healing as a result of that. This happened around the Mitchell Hedges skull, too. According to Anna Mitchell Hedges, when she was alive, people would come visit who had some kind of illness or injury, and all of a sudden they would get a healing. So, but the problem is you can't make, it's like with doctors, they have a certain procedure and things and way they do things. With crystal skull, you can't tell a person, okay, if you go see that, it's going to heal you. You don't know, because the person themselves and who they are and how they think about things has a lot to do with the illness or injury that they've sustained.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
And we've been taught that, there are no, not to expect miracles. But I think in the future, that's all that's going to be, is miracles.
Maybe you've gotten this question, but I'm going to throw it in.
Sure.
I'm sure you're familiar with the last Indiana Jones movie, which basically portrayed his exploits in search of the crystal skulls. And I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but basically it kind of described almost like that it needed all of these skulls to be together at the same time. And then that's, as a matter of fact, that's why I had asked you if there was an extraterrestrial connection, because basically that's what it turned out to be. That this was connected from something that had come from another place.
Right.
Is the theme of that movie very far-fetched from reality as far as crystal skulls are concerned?
Well, when they start throwing the skull around, that was not very realistic.
Okay.
Because the size of the skull, if it was made of quartz, it was made of plastic, obviously.
Right.
Would have been at least 30 pounds. And Portalus is 10, and if I throw him, he only goes a little distance. Okay?
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. People don't realize in a certain concentrated size.
Right.
That's
and then, to a large degree, they were showing that the skull was mesmerizing and had some evil intent connected to it. Now, as far as the 13 skulls coming together, they probably got that from the legend and being connected with extraterrestrials. So whoever wrote the story, if it was Spielberg or Lucas, I think that they got that idea, from the legends. And the Mayans have talked about, is it the god of the, I think they call them the gods of the Pleiades or grandfathers of the Pleiades, that are associated with the crystal skulls. So they respect that there is that connection. And it has also come up for me in meditations with some of the old skulls. I've had visions like with a mold of the Mitchell Hedges skull. When I was meditating with it in Brazil at a conference, which was for a local UFO group there. And I was sitting at a table, and there was a person across. I saw on board spacecraft that they had crystal skulls, and that possibly these crystal skulls on board the spacecraft were communicating, because they can't be a communication device with the ones that were here on the Earth. So I think that the first crystal skulls were gifted by the gods, which would be the extraterrestrials. And
what's the oldest skull that's been found? How old is it?
Well, the problem is we don't have a scientific way to date.
Okay.
Because it's an inorganic substance, whatever stone it is.
Okay.
If you go by legends, we could talk about skulls that are thousands of years old, but they could be millions of years old. I mean, I have memory of working with crystal skulls in Atlantis and Lemuria. And Lemuria could be over 100,000 years old. So I don't know if the age really matters so much. To me, what's the most important is they're here, and that they're a tool for awakening consciousness and to help humanity to create peace, which is what I think is their ultimate goal.
Right. And I guess my question was like, how long have humans been working with these crystal skulls? And I understand what you're saying as far as dating them, like by any type of testing that, like you described, there really isn't.
Right. Like if you find one in an ancient ruin and you date the organic with carbon-14 dating organic objects. That will give you some idea, but it doesn't tell you for the skull, because in the legends by the indigenous people, they're passing them from one civilization to another. So I would say, because I remember them in Atlantis and Lemuria, at least over 100,000 years old.
That's quite old. That's quite old.
And that they're made out of quartz makes sense, because quartz is a very hard substance that could last
that length of time.
Shape. Right.
Have any been unearthed at any ancient ruins that you know of?
Well, Mitchell Hedges came out of Lubaton, which is a Mayan city. And I think Max, which is another one, I think they talked about it coming out of an ancient ruin in Mexico, or the shamans who had it found it in an ancient ruin. So,
okay.
So it makes sense that these people, especially Mesoamerican people, would be working with various crystal skulls.
Sure. So
they would be found in their ruins throughout Mexico and Central America.
Right, that's where I was going with that. That's what I was thinking. When they, sometimes some of these ruins that, I know some of them, they're being unearthed as we speak, as far as they've been reclaimed by the jungle, or they've, because of the satellite imagery, now they're able to pinpoint better the location.
Right. There's no way to keep track of how many. So many have come out within the past 30, 40 years. I mean, I was at a conference in Mexico, and the local people brought the crystal skulls they had, and I hadn't met any of them, and I'm sure there were more than 100 there.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
So I think there are thousands upon thousands of them, and that's not including thousands and thousands being carved now by modern carvers. And the thing is why would they be carving so many if there wasn't some purpose for them to serve? It's not just about selling them for money. It's that they have a higher purpose as well.
That's so interesting, Joshua, what you're describing. I'm sure that people want to know more about this. I'm going to have links to your website in the credits of the show, but for my podcast listeners, what website can they go to get more information about you and your books and everything else? Okay,
so CSE, like Crystal Skull Explorers, CSE.crystalskullexplorers.com is the best website to go to. And then, as I told you, all of your listeners, we have 3 free ebooks.
Okay.
If they send me an email at crystalskullexplorers@gmail.com, I have a webpage I can send them to where they can download these 3 ebooks. One is on crystal skulls. One is about that we may be in a computer simulation. And the last one, which is very important, that's connected to what's happening now, is called The Messages from Argus, which is the name I will take in our future. I have a guide who's called Argus that says, Joshua, I'm who you will become in this lifetime in our future. And I keep feeling like he's talking to me from 2037 to 2040. So
you're talking something along the lines of the Matrix. And the reason why I'm referencing that is a lot of people are very familiar with that movie, as far as like you said, a computer program per se, masquerading as reality.
Yeah. So there's a story told by Jerry Wills, who I personally know. He went to Amaru Maru, which is a huge stone door in near Lake Titicaca in Peru. And he went through that door and he met the people who may have created this universe. And they told him that they created this universe as a computer simulation to understand their own, and they didn't have any life in it, and life just spontaneously appeared out of nowhere.
Interesting. Wow.
So I talk about that in that free ebook as well. And I talk about 2 personal experiences that show me that we will have a positive future happening to us around this time. The messages from Argus I received while I was in Brazil. He channeled through me. And then, what was the other one? Oh, yeah, my coma experience had some strange things that happened. So that's in the book. So I know for myself that this timeline, eventually we will see a positive result, a positive future. But I don't know, like where we are now, how we're going to get there. But I believe that that's what our destiny is. So people just have to not listen to the major media or news.
Right. The negative, the I want to,
right.
lack of a better word, fatalistic almost.
Yeah. Follow their intuition, their discernment. Telegram is where I'm finding the most information that's really explaining all the things going on from the channels and groups there. And and I just believe that
Are you on Telegram? If anybody wanted to hook up with you there on Telegram?
Yeah, I don't know what name I'm under there, but if
they search for you though, would you come up? Because I know they have a search part where you could look for.
Yeah, I guess if they look for Joshua Shapiro, they might find me.
Okay.
I haven't started any channels myself. I've just joined a bunch. And, sometimes there's a few people I'm actually talking with on there. You can talk to individuals. But mostly I'm just, every day checking the groups to see, what they're sharing and what might really be going on behind the scenes. So.
Sure. And I know that a lot of people have, I want to say nowadays, they have more questions than they normally would. They probably have had in their whole life, I think, most people now.
Yeah, definitely.
There's so many things happening.
Definitely.
Again, Joshua, thank you so much. It has been wonderful speaking to you. And I know you talked about this book. Do you have any new book projects or anything coming up that you're planning on?
The newest project that's coming up, but I don't know how this is going to work. I have a friend in Canada, in British Columbia. She just felt inspired to work with me to do a new documentary on crystal skulls.
Oh, wow.
So initially it's going to be kind of based on the skulls I've worked with and some of my experiences, but we're also thinking about maybe we need to interview some other people too.
Okay.
So, we're just talking about it right now. So I'm hopeful that this will come to pass. And I'm also thinking as in areas that we do it in a way that nobody's ever done a documentary before. So we'll just have to see how it turns out.
Okay. Well, I look forward to that you come back. I don't know I know sometimes documentaries and things, it takes a while for the, pre-production, production, and after the fact before you actually get the finished product.
Yeah.
But I would love to have you back, and hopefully that will be come a reality, the fruition, of the whole thing, because I imagine that'd be very interesting.
Anytime. I'd be happy to come back. There's always new things happening every day now. So
yes, I'm sure. Again, thank you so much and take care.
Okay. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Likewise.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So this is such an interesting. This is the first guest I've ever had that has spoken about this, and I, and the reason why I threw that reference to the Indiana Jones movie is, I'm sure there's people out there that this is the first time in other words, as far as reference, even though I don't think it has much to do with the reality of it, so that they can kind of understand where that comes from. And as you could tell, there's definitely, in even for people that work with minerals or gems, as far as the properties, without them being carved, they kind of understand where some of this comes from, as far as, different types of minerals and gems have different powers, or I don't want to say powers, but they're, some are used for healing. Some psychics use some because they feel that it gives them better perception. A lot of people use it to clear away negativity. Some people will tell you, there's even ways of, cleansing your if let's say if you have a group of stones, that, maybe you need to cleanse them. Let's say if you've been using them for healing or even in paranormal work. I always carried I left mine out there. I have a big clear quartz stone with a feather, which I use for smudging. And I've had it for, I've had it for years. And I would always carry it with me in my bag when I did investigations. And I had a smaller version that I would carry on my person when I would do investigations. And, you know, there's even, you can look it up anywhere. There's methods to cleanse them, like you leave them outside in the sunshine, depending on what you use these. And I want to say now, I carry a bag of them around with me. And if you look at my purse inside one of the zippered compartments, I have stones there. And I want to say a pretty decent sized clear quartz that I carry with me. And then every once in a while I remember, I need to take it out and just like get exposed to the sunshine and the outside and everything and recharge it, in other words. And this having to do with the skulls. I understand that I don't have one. I've never had one, but I understand the perspective of what he's talking about because of the properties of gemstones or the minerals involved in it. And that's why I even asked him, are the origins from Earth as far as because they were mined here? Or is there an ET connection? I think it's fascinating what he's saying as far as that there's beings that, I want to say, for lack of a better word, inhabit each particular skull. And, are we talking here, and what he said that it's even there, even before it's the actual creation of the skull itself, which I think is fascinating because, of course, anybody that's, is familiar with nature, elementals, or the theory of elementals or nature spirits or things having to do with the ground, kind of will understand that. As far as that each part of, in other words, everything is alive, not just the animals or the humans, but that plants and the earth itself. And, some people will think of animism, when you think of even inanimate objects. And I mean, we could go down the road of, I'm sure some of you have heard, that spirits will take up residence in dolls for those people that are doll phobics, like, get me away from the dolls, because you've heard of all these stories of them being taken over by discarnate spirits. But that's not, as far as reference, we're talking here something that comes out of nature, out of the earth. And basically part of what he was saying, that everything is one, different, but one. I mean, we could go with there in a lot of directions with that. But anyway, guys, I hope you liked the show. I loved bringing somebody as fascinating as Joshua to speak about something which is like, I love it because his message overall, I think, is very positive. It talks about healing. And we spoke briefly before we started recording how, he exactly what he said towards the end, that the messages that he's getting from the skulls that he works with is that overall, everything, despite sometimes what people think or what it appears, as far as, what we see on the television, etc., is that we are going to end up in a positive, what's the word I'm looking for? That everything will work out. And I know people will say, well, aren't you kind of being Pollyannish about this, Marlene? Yeah, but I'll tell you what, and I believe in being realistic, but I do believe that our mindset also creates the reality that manifests. And I think that hope, that saying, hope springs eternal. I think hope is very important. And that's why I really like his message that eventually everything will be all right for all of us. And I've said it before in other shows, I'm a humanist. I believe in the goodness of human beings, despite that we have a lot of examples to the contrary of that. But I do believe ultimately that we will triumph and that everything will turn out right. And by this, when I mean all right, I don't mean perfect, because even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it, perfect can be boring. And it's maybe just one of these lessons that we're just, the people that are alive now, living during these years and afterwards, are just meant to learn. Like we're at the right place at the right time, even though we might think we're not, but we are. And maybe, in hindsight, and I'm sure this has happened to people who've been alive for a little bit. Sometimes you look back at your life and after years have passed by, you look at sometimes difficult moments in your life, not all of them, and you understand why certain things worked out. Or that maybe that difficulty led to better things. And you realize if I had not gone through that situation, I would not have come to either better myself or gone on to something better. In other words, I had to traverse that experience or that phase of my life to find myself at a better situation for a lot of different reasons, whether it's self-development or just, it could be a million things. And I think that ultimately, that's getting to the point of what I was saying. Ultimately, I think that this, everything that's going on with, I want to say when the last, it's going to be almost 16 months, 18 months, whatever. I think that all the ups and downs that we've gone through, as far as especially with everything, our health, the fear of what's going on, and how's it going to work out eventually for all of us as human beings, not just on an individual basis. That in the end, it's going to be okay, and that we'll look back at this at some point. I don't know how far in the future that we can look back and say, "Oh, okay, it was difficult, but I get it now." I do think that eventually, when we do look back at this time period collectively, we will have realized that that there was a reason for it, and that we're better for it. Sometimes that is the secret of difficult lessons, whether it's on an individual or collective basis. But anyway, guys, I've got a great slew of guests coming on, and I want to thank you for coming back every week and joining me when I interview all these interesting people. Like I said, returning guests or new guests. And again, please go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com. You can reach out to me there if you want to send me an email to Marlene at MiamiGhostChronicles.com. Again, I have tabs where you can submit true stories or questions. You can find links to the videos or to podcasts of the shows from different podcast platforms. Whatever, if you have a certain app that you favor, if you go to that MiamiGhostChronicles.com, I will have a link to the show for that specific app, whatever it might be. So again, thank you. Take care. And